All right, my name is Susan Ferris Wrights. I'm the co-president of the League of Women Voters of Berkeley Heights, New Providence, and Summit, and I'm the moderator for this event. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. Basically, it was started to help women gain information so that they could vote with intelligence and knowledge when they were first given the right to vote, which was about 100 years ago. Many people were afraid that they would vote the way that their husbands voted, so they started the League of Women Voters. While we never endorse a candidate, we are directly involved in shaping the important issues to keep our community strong. So, while we are having this candidates debate, I'd like you to think about this as you watch and you listen to this debate. Think ahead, ask yourself what issues are the most important to you, and jot them down on the note cards that you should have found in your seats. What we're going to do is have you give us questions. That's what's up here. If you have a question that you'd like to have answered, what you need to do is bring that question up here and we'll go through it. Okay? Each candidate is going to have an opportunity to make an opening statement for 2 minutes. And the person who guessed the right number and gets to go first is right here to my left. So, let me make sure all my sheets are ready. All right. If you would, when you make your opening statement, introduce yourself to the audience, just so you can state your name and say it correctly, and so I don't mispronounce it, that would be even better. So you may get started, sir.
Thank you. I am David Dietz of 11 Sunset Drive. First, I thank the League of Women Voters for organizing this event. I also thank the many dedicated Summit citizens, including Mayor, members of Common Council who have come out tonight. Finally, I congratulate all my fellow candidates. Summit wins when there's spirited discussion about the ways we can make this city better. So the first question you may have is, why am I up here? I am very committed to this city. I've lived here for more than 2 decades. Summit Mayor Walter Long married Claire and me in City Hall in 1996. Both of our children were born here, over at Overlook. We've had a great run. Billy going K through 12 in our superb public schools, now a college sophomore, while Betsy is enjoying her senior year right here at Summit High School. But Summit is not just my home. I've grown a business in the heart of our downtown for over 2 decades. Frankly, I do have a vested interest in making our city as great as possible. So your second question may be, why am I well suited to the potential task at hand? I've served for nearly 6 years, toiled for thousands of volunteer hours on the Board of Education, including as its president, which body spends over half the tax dollars raised in this city. As a lawyer, as a financial analyst for 35 years, I bring essential skills. As a volunteer for many of the city's nonprofits, including the Y, Overlook, I have a wealth of close friends that I've been privileged to work closely with to get big things done. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Okay, thank you. And you may go next, Matthew Gould.
Okay, thank you, Susan, and thanks for the League of Women Voters for having me here. I'm Matt Gould. I hope you vote for me in November for the Common Council Ward 1 seat. I love Summit. I've been here for almost 10 years with my wife, Stephanie, who's in the back, and our 3 daughters, one at each school, Washington School, the middle school, and the high school. So I really get the most out of the public schools here. In the past few years, I've become increasingly engaged in volunteering. I serve as a trustee at the Visual Arts Center of New Jersey, and I'm on the Summit Public Art Committee trying to put sculptures in town. But the more I raise my hand to volunteer, the more I see the effort it takes to make Summit such a great place. I think when I first moved here, I thought it was a great town, and I was happy for that. And then later, when you sort of get to know the town a little better, I realized how many people make this town very special. So my career, I've worked as a senior television executive, and I've been responsible for some pretty big hit television shows like American Chopper, Miami Ink, and Man vs. Food. And because of these shows, I've worked in 48 out of the 50 states, and I've worked in about 15 different countries around the world. And in doing that, I've seen so many different systems of government. I've been embedded with mayor's offices, with fire departments, with police departments, with firefighters and ambulances. And I see, first of all, how cities work. Second, I've come to realize what a special place Summit really is. And that's why I want to run and do my part to make Summit even better. I want to pitch in to make sure that our city is safe and affordable for all of us. The things that I think we need to do, we need to stretch every dollar to make it all work. We need to make sure that our downtown continues to thrive in the face of the threat of e-commerce. I think we need to build on Summit Police Departments and Chief Weck's hard work to make sure that our streets are safe for bikes, cars, and pedestrians. And we need to take care of our senior citizens.
Okay.
Thank you.
All righty. Yes, sir. You're next.
Hi, my name is John Dougherty. I am running as a Ward 1 candidate for Summit Common Council this fall. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity to participate in tonight's forum. I know Summit. I was born and raised here, right here in East Summit. And I am the only candidate in this year with the perspective and knowledge. I am the only former city employee also to run for office here in town. I have been a public servant most of my adult life, serving as a police officer in Summit for 28 years. I know the meaning of service for self and cherish the opportunity to again make a difference in the lives of others. I retired as captain 5 years ago. I have held command positions in the Detective Bureau, Juvenile Bureau, Traffic Bureau, and the Records Division. I am also a committed Summit volunteer. I have served on over 25 boards, volunteer organizations, and not-for-profit groups. Most recently, I have been a member of the Summit City Planning Board for 3 years, and I am acutely aware of the major issues that are addressed by the master plan. One of the most important concerns to the residents of Summit is traffic and pedestrian safety. As the former Traffic Bureau Commander, I will again offer my training and experience to work with the police department to strategize targeted enforcement programs and the use of innovative traffic calming measures to reduce speeding, distracted driving, and the disregard of traffic control devices. Another important concern here in town is some of these taxes. There are over 500 municipalities in New Jersey. Each duplicates the same separate local municipal departments. This is an unsustainable model of government. There are opportunities to share some services with other towns and cut costs. This was successfully accomplished with our recently created shared dispatch center. I will look forward to identifying these opportunities and reduce the burden on the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Beth Little.
Hi, my name is Beth Little, and yes, I'm a PTO mom. I'm also a former child abuse prosecutor, an active community volunteer, and the candidate for the at-large seat on the City Council. My husband Bill and I moved to Summit 15 years ago for the same reasons that I'm sure a lot of you did. Our express trains, the incredible school system, and the great downtown. When I had moved to Summit, I had recently left my career as a prosecutor, and I was eager to get meaningfully involved in my new hometown. And that's when I learned that there's other less obvious things that make Summit really special. That's our diversity, our incredible sense of community, and the spirit of neighbors helping neighbors. And those qualities are reflected in the many incredible community organizations that serve Summit residents. I've been very lucky to be involved deeply in 3 of those organizations in the last 15 years. Santa Claus Shop, which supports our low-income residents, The Connection, which provides programming to a variety of residents, families, seniors, special needs residents, ESL, I could go on, and the Summit Educational Foundation, which provides grants to all the schools in our district. I have 4 kids, so I've also been very involved in our public schools and sports teams in the community. I'm currently the president of the middle school PTO. My experiences here in Summit and my career have qualified me well to serve you and represent you on council. My relationships that I've built with residents from every corner of Summit through my experiences in community organizations allow me to bring a different set of perspectives and viewpoints to look at the issues that face Summit. Also, my prosecutorial experience has given me a love of research, an ability to advocate effectively, and the willingness to tackle tough issues. I hope to do that while representing you on council. I hope for your support on November 7th.
Thank you. Okay, and Marjorie Fox?
Hi, I'm Marjorie Fox, and I'm running for the Ward 2 council seat. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this debate and to all of you for participating in our democracy. I'm running because I want to bring new ideas and a fresh perspective to council. I love Summit, but I believe that we always need to be moving forward and innovating. For example, can we implement creative solutions such as a jitney service to address parking issues instead of indebting ourselves to build another large parking structure? Can we help downtown businesses thrive by streamlining the permitting process and re-examining our zoning laws? Can we make Summit's government more responsive to its residents by communicating more effectively and by using technology? I'd like to tell you now a little bit about myself. I have lived in Summit for 18 years with my husband Jeff and our 2 children who we've sent through the public schools. I've been involved with numerous organizations in Summit for the past 18 years. I've served on the Environmental Commission since 2005, and in 2006 I founded the citywide Earth Day Cleanup, which is now in its 11th year. This event attracts over 150 volunteers each April to clean up city and county parks. And through this project, I've built relationships with city staff, school groups, and local organizations. And these relationships will allow me to be an effective council member from day one. I also chair the Recycling Advisory Committee in Summit. We're charged with expanding the city's recycling program and educating the public about recycling. I have been responsible for working on a program that saves the city over $700,000 each year. And I will look for similar initiatives on council where it's a win-win, where we do something good and we save money. Finally, before moving to Summit, I represented the city of New York as an attorney. And my experiences as an attorney for the city of New York, representing the largest city in the country, and my work here as a volunteer in local city government make me uniquely qualified to represent Summit's residents on the council and to move Summit forward. I ask for your vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Thanks. And our last candidate, Mike Wadding.
Is everyone still awake? My turn.
Thanks.
Six to go. Good evening. Thanks everyone for coming. It's so great to see so many friends here, but more importantly, it's so great to see so many Summit residents involved in exercising their civic duty and getting involved in learning about their candidates. I'm very excited and humbled to sit here before you tonight. I'm running for council to preserve and grow the Summit experience that my family and I have been so blessed to have. I believe my financial, business, and civic experience makes me the best candidate on the ballot in Ward 2. First, I'd like to share my story. I was born the second of 6 children in a small town outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Like so many other families in Western PA, mine was hit hard by the globalization of the steel industry, and basic economics forced us south of what is now called the Rust Belt in search of a better future. I returned to Pittsburgh for college, attending Duquesne University, where I put myself through school and met my wife, Pamela. After college, Pamela and I got engaged and started looking for a place to raise a family. When we found Summit, it was love at first sight. We bought our first Summit home in June of 2000, and over the last 17 years, our family has grown to include 4 children, all 4 born at Overlook Hospital, all 4 attend Summit Public Schools. Professionally, I'm a senior vice president and financial advisor at a global investment firm where I act as the personal CFO for my clients and help them make smart decisions about their money. In 2012, I moved my business to downtown Summit. Having a 1-mile commute allows me the time to serve on council. My Summit volunteer experience started at the Summit chapter of the American Red Cross. I was a board member there for 5 years, the last 3 as board chairman. Because of my work with the Red Cross, I was honored by the Summit Elks as their 2011 Summit Citizen of the Year. I've also served as president of the Summit Taxpayers Association. It was there where I became immersed in municipal budgets and became a leading local voice on behalf of the Summit taxpayer. My commitment to all of you is to listen to your needs and concerns, work hard every day, and always do what is best for Summit. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, if you have a question that you prepared on a note card with a writing utensil, you need to bring it forward now, because we're going to get started. This is where they go. Does anyone have a question? We're good? Okay. All right, here's the first question, and I'm going to have, since we started on this end, Mike, you're going to answer it first, please. This is directed to all candidates. Yeah, okay. Here you go. And we're going to divide the room up a little bit. Okay, full-day kindergarten. Several candidates have stated that they are for it. What is your position? If you support it, A, how would you pay for it? What are estimated startup costs and ongoing costs per pupil? That's the question as I read it. So, Mike, go ahead.
60 seconds?
You have 60 seconds, and then you're going to have 30 seconds.
I've been told I can be verbose, so I'll try to get another 60 seconds.
Okay, well, we eliminated
Look,
that.
I have 4 kids in the Summit Public Schools, so I know firsthand how important our excellent education system is. I'm running for Common Council. I'm not asking to be appointed to the Board of Education. The Board of Education and the superintendent set education policy. So if it's something they think we should look at, I think we should take a look at it. The question that I would have is, what problem are we trying to solve? Over the last few years, I've attended several Board of Education meetings, and one I attended in October of 2016 stuck out to me. The data that presented there said that 12% of the children that had attended full-day kindergarten needed extra help with basic skills in reading and math. 6% of the kids that attended half-day kindergarten from Summit needed extra skills help in reading and math. So I would ask, what problem are we trying to solve? And that's my minute.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if you have a timer, but I do.
We do. Okay, Marjorie, you're next.
Okay, I support full-day kindergarten, the universal program. I think for several reasons. First of all, the Board of Education in 2013, the experts on the Board of Education made a determination that it was beneficial. And I agree with Mike that we shouldn't be injecting our own personal viewpoints into this. We should be deferring to the experts. That being said, I think Mike is citing data that Jennifer Ambrose, when she presented the numbers, did say was not valid. It was too small a sample to be valid. So I would go with what the data that's out there right now says, which is that it is a benefit. Secondly, I think there is definitely a demand. I'm hearing that when I walk door to door, and I'm also hearing that. You can see that because 2/3 of the kids who go to Summit Public Kindergarten pay the tuition and go full day. Finally, it makes us non-competitive if we don't have it. 80% of the schools in Summit have full-day kindergarten. I mean, in the state have full-day kindergarten. So if we don't have it, we're at a disadvantage. Finally, we need to figure out how to pay for it.
We have final. Okay. Beth?
Do I get a rebuttal?
At the
At
end.
the end, everyone gets an opportunity to answer,
Thank you.
and then we do the 30-second, okay?
Thanks.
Okay.
So I think the problem that we're trying to solve is that I believe in our current system that children are being disadvantaged from a public school program based on their family's ability to pay. And right now, our tuition-based kindergarten system costs almost $7,200 per year per student. And right now in our schools, over 2/3 of the students are choosing to pay that full-day cost and go to a full-day program, and 1/3 of the students are not. We're hearing that many of the students who don't choose to pay the tuition, it isn't because they don't want the full-day program, it's because they can't afford it for their families. We haven't looked at this issue as a community in over 5 years. In that time, the demographics have changed, the Common Core standards have changed, and clearly the demand has increased for the full-day program. I think it's time for us to take another look at it as a community, to have some community town halls to discuss and see where we are as a community and where we want to be. I think right now, my biggest issue with this is that I don't want to disadvantage kids based on their parents' income.
Okay. John?
Okay, all-day kindergarten, I'm not for it, and I'll tell you why. I don't want to place an unnecessary additional burden on the taxpayers. Right now, there's insufficient data in my mind that I've seen to prove that it makes a difference. but I have an open mind, so if at some point that changes, I'll change my mind if the data indicates that. But I'm making this statement not as an educator, because I'm not an educator. I'm a father of 4 sons who recently went through the college application process, and I can tell you what does matter. If you're going to spend extra money on the schools, spend it where it's going to make a difference. And where I found it makes a difference is ACT, SAT preps, additional AP courses, because the competition for them is extreme, and the more you have, the better off you're doing the application process. And I was bolster the sports programs. I've seen more kids get that extra push to get into college based on their varsity sports ability with the Division I schools and the Ivy League schools. That's my position. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All righty, and Mr. David. I'm sorry, Mr. Matthew. Matthew Gould.
I support full-day kindergarten. I don't have all the facts. I don't know yet how the town would pay for it, but I'm convinced that if we put it back to the Board of Education and challenge them to find creative ways to afford it, that they can. I'm for it without raising the budget, assuming, if we can do it without raising the budget, assuming that the data shows that it's good for our students. I do think that it's basically a middle-class tax the way it is right now, where you have to pay for it $7,200. And so people clearly want to go that can't afford to go. I do agree with John that SAT prep and ACT prep are important. However, I think investing in sports over full-day kindergarten would be a big mistake.
Okay.
Thank you. So I can't directly address this question. I'm the chair of the Education Committee on the Board of Education. That matter is directly in front of us. I've been told it would be a breach of ethics and bad form to talk about the details, given my inside knowledge of it. But what I can tell you about is what I believe our educational goals should be and the methods of attainment. First, I'm the biggest booster of education of anyone. I wouldn't have devoted thousands of volunteer hours to our board if I wasn't. So I'm looking to invest in our children's education as much as possible. But you know, there are limits of financial resources, indeed time during the day, which means each educational investment must count. Each investment must boost student achievement. We must be able to measure that achievement. If we can't measure, we can't detect any progress. That measurement can take many forms. Could be testing, AP performance, college admissions. Then we have to look at the cost, both in terms of the time allocated during the day, as well as financial resources.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, here we go. Okay, Marjorie, you're going to answer this first.
We don't get a rebuttal?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a rebuttal?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think...
Okay, 30 seconds, sir.
I think we'd all benefit if we just gave our own opinions rather than putting volleys back and forth about what data may or may not be. The data's the data. We're all entitled to our own opinions, but we're not entitled to our own data. Again, I think if it's something that the Board of Education and our superintendent are advocating for, which they are not, then we should take a look at it. But Westfield, Chatham, Berkeley Heights, New Providence, those are towns around us that have put these debates to rest because they let the educational experts make the decision. We have 300 children in full-day kindergarten, 3,300 seniors.
Done. That's
Thank
the
you.
30-second rebuttal. Thank you. Okay,
you.
anyone else need to rebut?
I would like to.
Go ahead.
Well, I think Mike and I have a basic disagreement on this because the data that he's citing is data that, that the person from the Board of Education, Jennifer Ambrose, specifically said was too small a sample size to be relied upon to determine basic skills in full and half-day kindergarten, first of all. Second of all, we have to figure out how to pay for it, and I think a lot of these other towns that Mike mentioned, it's not because they don't think it's efficacious, it's because they haven't figured out how to pay for it. And we're in that same boat right now, and I challenge the Board of Education to figure out how to pay for this in a fiscally responsible manner without raising taxes.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I just want to say my opponent said he can't comment publicly on this, but he did comment publicly in the spring while he was a candidate in his closing statements as a Board of Ed president. And he stated two things. He stated that anyone in town who wanted full-day kindergarten is now getting it, And I would just disagree with that statement because anyone who wants it and can afford to pay $7,200 is getting it right now. And I take issue with that statement. And he also said that it was virtually free for anyone who's on free and reduced lunch program, and I take issue with that too. The cost for reduced lunch is still $2,500, which if you're a family of four making $44,000, that's not free.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else rebuttal? And go ahead.
Yeah, so I wish our kindergarten program was free. When I got on the board, it did not exist. Today, about 155 students are taking advantage of it. For the most disadvantaged in our community, it is $4 a day. I wish it was zero, but it is $4 a day. For everyone else, it's $39 a day. I wish we could figure out a way to deal with that, and I'm sure some good ideas will come from some of these candidates as to who should pay that $39.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, we're going to go to the next question, and Marjorie, you're going to start the response, okay? And this question is pertaining to diversity. Summit is very proud of being a very diverse town. What do you define as diversity? Do you find it valuable? Yes. Why or why not? If you do, what are your plans to promote more diversity? Go ahead, Marjorie.
Well, I think diversity is important, and that's one of the reasons that my husband Jeff and I chose to move here 18 years ago, because this town has socioeconomic diversity, it has racial diversity, it has diversity of religions, and just, it really is sort of a melting pot, and we liked that component of it, and we liked the fact that everyone really, there was a sense of community, and I think that's very important. As far as what I would do to encourage that, I think creating programs that give everyone an equal leg up, and one of those would be full-day kindergarten. Giving everyone an equal opportunity to succeed is very important, and we need to find a way. We are, Milburn has full-day kindergarten, other towns in the Scotch Plains, Livingston. We are better than this. We are a wealthy town who can find a way to make this happen without increasing taxes. And I challenge the Board of Education to find a way to do that.
Okay, thank you. Apparently, people are having a hard time hearing over in this section. Is that correct? Yes. Who can't hear? Okay. All right.
Is this on?
Are the mics?
The mics are on, so I'm not really sure. Okay. All righty. Just remember that, maybe pull them a little closer if some people are having trouble. That'd be great. Okay. So Marjorie, John, you want to answer that? Diversity.
Yes,
Yeah.
diversity here in Summit. As I told you before, I've been a cop in this town for 28 years, and I've seen people at their best and their worst. Is there stereotypes going on at times? Yes, there are. I've seen them. But for the most part, this town is unlike other towns. It comes together in a time of crisis. I just refer back to times when we had those large snowstorms or ice storms and we lost power half the town. People were running generators to their neighbors' houses. They're helping out uptown, doing charging stations for cell phones. When that unfortunate incident happened in the fountain uptown, and that young man was killed by a group of teenagers, that family received donations like you wouldn't believe coming in. I mean, this town comes together for its own, and I don't see any diversity problem here in town. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Matthew Gould.
So is diversity valuable? Yes, it's one of the things that makes Summit great. And as I've been walking around the town, I've noticed that there is a lot more diversity than I even expected. I think it's important we have ethnic diversity, it's important we have socioeconomic diversity, and I think the way to promote that diversity is to make sure that we make Summit affordable and make sure that we have a rising tide that raises all the boats rather than just some of the boats. Another thing that I've really thought a lot about is age diversity. And this is where I think we have a problem in Summit, because I think that it's so expensive for seniors sometimes that when the property taxes keep going up and up and up, a lot of seniors, after their children leave, graduate from high school, they choose to move out of town. I was having breakfast with Jordan Glatt. I'd like to claim this idea as my own, but he and I were talking about one idea for seniors that have been living here a long time, say over 10 years, maybe after they hit the age of 70, we freeze their property taxes at that level. which would be good on two levels because they're less expensive citizens for the town because they don't have school children, and it would be great for them to stay and provide that age diversity to the town.
Okay, David Dietz.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I would approach this question two ways. One is my track record to start with. First, one of the most rewarding things about my 6 years on the Board of Ed is that our board is committed to bringing up student achievement for everyone, regardless of background. So I've been a constant supporter for the ESL program, English as a Second Language. Our literacy coach program is helping the youth make progress. I am so proud of the fact that although overall Summit High School sent 94% of its kids onto college, we have brought the college admission rate up to 88% for those who are first-generation college goers and minority college applicants. That's way up from when I first got on the board. We have instituted, I've been a big supporter of sensitivity training all the way. Another example where I've been actually walking the walk is my role as a trustee at the YMCA. I love that organization because it became a safe place for all and supported every single policy they had in that regard.
Great, thank you. Okay, Beth Little.
Oh, yes, thank you. I talked about diversity in the experiences I've had. Is one of the things that drew us to Summit is very important to me, and all the organizations I've been involved with really serve all the different populations. I would agree with a lot of the things that were said. I think affordability is key. I think providing housing options at different price points is key. I love Matt's idea about freezing the property taxes. I would also say that having a variety of voices on council and in our government that come from different perspectives and different viewpoints is also really key to maintaining the diversity and the different viewpoints and really representing everyone on council, making sure that the impact of decisions on council and how they're going to affect the different residents in the different segments of our town from different socioeconomic, age, racial diversity is really important.
Thank you. Okay, and Mike.
Thank you. Diversity is one of the things we love about Summit. We have diversity of age, religion, race, creed, all sorts of diversity, and that's what makes Summit Summit. I think the diversity of age is being threatened because of high property taxes. We need to make Summit more affordable. I'll pass along a note that was sent to me by a woman that lives here in Summit. Mike, thank you for what you're doing. So glad you're running for council. I'm hoping I can afford to stay in the town my grandfather came to over 100 years ago. He had a bicycle business in the old Opera House building in 1908. My granddaughter works while in college at the Summit Diner, 5 generations in Summit retail. Too many of my friends and family have been forced to leave due to rising taxes. 2.5 months of my income pays the tax on the unimproved lot next to my home. I rent half of my house in order to stay in Summit. Someone has to help seniors. So I think we have to be very careful about the people that have paid their dues and made Summit what Summit is, and allowing those people to still live here. I'm certainly open to exploring Matt's idea. That sounds like a good one as long as we can afford it. But I think age diversity is one of the things that I know I want to see my kids exposed to, and I think that is under threat.
Thank you. Okay, question number 3. Starting with John. New Jersey Transit has become very unreliable. From the summer of hell to cancellations due to the crumbling wall at the Summit train station. And Amtrak will be closing tracks again. How would you work with New Jersey Transit to ensure Summit has a more reliable service, and protect our commuters? Okay, take it away, John.
I can't say that I'm very familiar with the commuting because I don't commute, I never have, but I can empathize with those who have because I know a lot of friends who've complained about this summer of hell. I think what we need to do is go after the New Jersey Transit from our legislators and see if they can come up with innovative ways to move the work along. I mean, it seemed that they picked the one line that we all depend on and they worked on that all summer long. Is there some way they could have worked on that line and alternated? In advance of this, they could have come up with more innovative ways of having a busing system coming from the Summit train station. It seemed like it was put together at the last minute in response to the uproar of people complaining that they can't get into town or get back into town. So I think, given this work, and when we do construction in Summit, we always come up with detours. We come up with alternative plans so that there is some other way of getting in and out of the city. And that's what I would suggest.
Okay, thank you. Matthew Gould.
Thank you. New Jersey Transit is a disgrace. I'm a commuter. A lot of my friends are commuters. We ride the train together. They're late more often than they're on time. And, you know, the three pillars to Summit's property values are the schools, the commute, the downtown. The commute is a major pillar and a major problem. So how do we fix it? Well, here's my ideas. First, we do research. So this summer, Beth and Marjorie and I went and we handed out surveys to thousands of commuters. We got all those responses back. We gave them to Mayor Radis. And then she banded together. Second is banding together. She banded together with mayors up and down the Morris and Essex line. So from South Orange to Maplewood to Morristown. And then they all spoke to New Jersey Transit together. And I think because of that, New Jersey Transit was a bit better over the summer. You know, in some small way we affected it. And I think that we've really got to just keep hammering them with a unified voice for all the towns along the line until they make the changes that are needed and make the investment they need to make, because it's the profit center of all of America. They've got to keep investing in that.
Okay, thank you. And David.
Sure. So I agree with Mr. Gould here that we need to keep hammering on New Jersey Transit. I'd prefer to make it a bipartisan effort, however. I think we'd have even more persuasion with them. Obviously, we also need to keep pushing back on our legislators and other government agencies to provide more funding. We need to also look for alternative ways into New York and encourage some sort of busing. But I think the third thing that would perhaps kill a couple stones would be to encourage more corporations to come out in this area. If we had a couple more Celgians in town, we could reduce the residential tax burden by having them assume some of the tax burden, and we'd have another viable, strong place for people to work right here in town. They wouldn't have to go to New York. Thank you.
Okay. Mike.
Thanks. I'm a former commuter, so I feel your pain. New Jersey Transit is a symptom of what, if we look at city government as a division of New Jersey, is a symptom of a very mismanaged and poorly run state of New Jersey. The reason why New Jersey Transit is in the state that it's in is because too much money goes into the operating side of the budget, leaving no money for capital investment. We have a $70 billion hole in our pension. Right, so we have to continuously keep making money into these operating expenses, and that leaves us very little money left for capital expenses. New Jersey is the #1 state in the country in terms of property tax, #3 in sales tax, #5 in income tax, #1 in corporate income tax. Now we're #8 in gas tax, but somehow that's not enough to have an effective train. We're running a third world train system. So I think as most people have said here tonight, we all need to come together and demand better service from the state of New Jersey when it comes to New Jersey Transit.
Thank you. Marjorie.
I agree with a lot of what's been said. I think one of the things is that transportation funding and infrastructure funding as a whole have been gutted in recent years, and that's something where we need to focus. We need to focus it at the local level, but you know, as far as New Jersey Transit, we need to be advocating with our assembly, with the Assembly and the State Senate, and also with our Congress and our senators, to make sure that money is put into the transportation network. I think the other thing we need to do is advocate better with New Jersey Transit. We took our turn as the train line that was shut down most extensively in this past summer, and I think next time we ought to be very forceful in saying it's someone else's turn, not our turn. Finally, I think we need to band together with other towns to make sure that we are protected in that way. So I think this could be a bipartisan, and should be a bipartisan effort to address this.
Okay. All righty. Okay, next question is going to start with Matthew Gould. I'm sorry. Oh, whoops.
That's okay.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm not sure there's too much to add to this issue. I agree with a lot of what's been said up here, and I applaud actually Mayor Radis' efforts to do band with the other towns and to disseminate information to the town. I thought she did a really good job communicating what was going on, communicating the different options, and researching what was available and getting busing and other options into our commuters. But I agree that this is only, they peeled off a small corner of the Band-Aid and you know, slap some Neosporin underneath, but they didn't fix the whole problem. And this is going to continue to be a problem, and we have to insist that Summit doesn't always take the brunt of this, and that this is the easiest line to divert, but it's not the only line that can be diverted. And we have to make sure that our voices are heard.
Does anyone need to rebut any of the answers? Okay.
I don't think anyone has anything positive to say about New
I got it, right? Okay.
Some of the conductors are nice.
The people are nice.
That's my rebuttal.
Okay,
Thankless job.
the next question, we're going to start with you, Mr. Gould, and it's a two-part question. So, and this pertains to parking. Do you support building a parking structure? If so, how would you pay for it? Do you think that common council members who have a business downtown and would benefit should recuse themselves? That's the question. And you may start.
Do I support building a parking structure? No, because they're very expensive. You pay them off over decades rather than years. And I think that people's driving habits are changing fairly dramatically right now, and now is not the time to invest in that kind of infrastructure. I do think that we have to solve the parking issue, and I've explored it pretty thoroughly. I know that it's mainly between 12 and 2, Monday through Friday, that we have the biggest problem. So the problem is there's commuters and employees that take up all the spots, and then the shoppers can't get there. So I know we did the pilot program with Uber, which I think was very successful. I'd like to expand on that. I'd really like to explore the idea of a jitney like they have in Maplewood that can make figure eights around town and pick up commuters. I'd like to increase the sidewalks and bike lanes we have in town so that more people can walk. And I'd like to explore every other opportunity we can to create more parking for shoppers, employees, and commuters without building a new parking structure.
Okay, Beth Little.
I agree with a lot of what Matt said. I think we need to be creative with the parking that we have instead of committing, you know, an estimate of $10 million, maybe a 30-year bond in building a parking structure. I think we can do a lot with the parking we have in terms of Ubers and jitneys and restructuring the parking fees, which was done in the DeForest lots, which discourages long-term parking and opens up spots for short-term shoppers. The other opportunity we have for parking is in the Broad Street redevelopment corridor. So if we're going to look at redeveloping that area, we could incorporate some parking in there and have developers paying for it rather than the city paying for it. So I'm not in favor of building a new parking structure in the downtown. The idea of recusing is a tough one. I think it's tough when council members have to choose between their own business interests and the interests of the town. I think that's a tough question.
Thank you. Okay. John.
Parking. It's not a science. If it was, we'd have it all figured out by now. I'm quoting Mike McTurnan from one of the council meetings, so I can't take credit for that. However, I've seen 2 studies done over the years, and each study has concluded that we have between 200 and 300 spaces a deficit. So it's pointing that we have to build something. The question is, where do we want to put it? You know, several places have been talked about, DeForest Avenue. It's even been talked about putting it on the undeveloped section by the Broad Street parking garage. I think we have to figure out where is it most advantageous to build this thing, and the question is, how are we going to pay for it? As I said before, I don't want to put an unnecessary tax burden back onto the taxpayers, so I think the time now is to privatize. Let's lease the land out and have some other entity build it for us and bear the cost of costs. Thank you.
Marjorie.
Well, I think if you ask parking consultants, it's sort of like going to a surgeon and ask, do you need surgery? Same thing, if you ask parking consultants, they'll always say you need more. And yes, we have a deficit, but I think I agree with what Beth and Matt have talked about, which is some creative solutions. One thing that I've noticed is that on-street metered parking is actually less expensive than parking in the DeForest lots. And that seems to me to create an incentive where people stay on those metered spots and they pump the meters. So I think we need to, first of all, change how we spend, how we structure the parking fees. We need to enforce, so we encourage turnover, and we need to come up with creative solutions to get, to find as much parking as we can, rather than spending $10 million with a 30-year bond. As far as recusing, I agree with Beth, that's a tough question, but I do not have any interest in the downtown other than as a concerned citizen and potentially as your council member. So I would note that my concern is only that.
Thank you. Okay, David?
Yeah, thank you. You know, having knocked on thousands of doors since March, talked with many friends who live outside Summit, they all think parking is a problem. They don't want to come downtown because of the parking. I operate a business downtown. My employees complain constantly. So I think parking is an issue. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Now, I flatly reject the idea that the city incurs a huge debt to pay for a huge structure, which is true. You know, technology may render moot in a few years. What I could be open to, and I'm not sure where, is if some developer came up and we structured a well-crafted lease so that they would put up the money. They would take the risk, and that we would structure the lease so that they couldn't overcharge and have to have decent operating standards. That may be a viable solution. It won't be easy, but that's why I'm looking forward to the task.
Okay, thank you. And Mike?
I'm going to borrow from Marjorie. I think she's right. When to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. When you ask a parking person whether you need more parking spots or not, they always say yes. I don't believe that building a parking garage is the right answer. I'm fortunate to have been asked to serve on the Summit Parking Advisory Committee last year, and I've learned more about parking in the last 12 months than I ever thought was possible to learn about parking. There's really no one-size-fits-all solutions. Council has approved 2 parking studies in recent years. It did show, as we said before, a deficit of a few hundred spaces. There are basically 2 ways to look at our challenges. You either build a garage, or you continue to innovate and evolve some of the things that we've done recently. I think there's pros and cons of each. I fall on the side of innovation. I've got 4 kids, as I've mentioned several times already, but what is my 2nd grader going to do? Is he even going to own a car? Is he going to be part of the sharing economy where a car comes and picks him up and then goes and picks the next person up? So I don't want to be the last person, the last city in America to build a parking garage. I think it's useless to use yesterday's solutions for today's problems.
Okay.
Challenges.
All right. Beth, you're going to be first up on this next question, and it is pertaining to... Okay.
Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah. All right. What is your position on Summit becoming a sanctuary city? Beth, you're up first.
Well, that's it.
Go, Beth.
That is a tough question. It has a lot of sides, and a lot of issues are involved in answering that question. I would say that I'm not in favor of Summit becoming a sanctuary city, and there's a number of reasons for that. One is that Summit is not seen. Summit's seen as an affluent community. It's not seen as a community where there is a big problem with undocumented and that population. So to name ourselves as a sanctuary city, I think puts a big red blinking light on us and draws a lot of attention to us from ICE. The other is that I've spoken to Chief Weck, and I know that our police department is doing a lot of the things now that they would be doing as a sanctuary city. Their main concern is safety of residents, and they have no desire to act as agents of the Border Control, and they are doing a lot of those things already. So I feel that all residents in our town are treated fairly and equally, and the main concern for all of us should be resident safety, and that's why I would not do it.
Okay. Mike.
I do not favor Summit being named a sanctuary city. This is a question we were asked in our hometown TV debate. As a council member, you take an oath to uphold the law. And if we don't like the law, change the law. But right now, the law says if you're here illegally and you commit a crime, the federal authorities need to be notified. So that's how I feel about it.
Okay, thank you. Marjorie Fox.
Yes, I would not support sanctuary city status either. I have spoken to Chief Weck as well, and And I've also spoken to a lot of people in the community, and I'm not hearing that that's an issue that people are concerned about here in Summit. I think it's a much more a national issue, and I think the most important thing is that the police are able to keep Summit, the community, safe. And that means that people need to feel safe coming to the police if they're the victim of a crime or if they witness a crime. And that's my focus. We should not be agents of ICE. That doesn't mean that if someone commits a felony that we shouldn't contact the Border Control and ICE, but it's not, but our primary concern is to protect Summit's residents.
Okay, David?
So I like where we are now. I would not want to be sanctuary city with a capital S, capital C, because I don't want to be seen as flouting the law. We're going to have to take an oath to uphold the law, so that's not going to work. Plus, we would be sending a message to everyone else that would potentially attract the wrong kinds of elements if they thought we were kind of a lawless town. Having said that, I support and I'm glad that effectively we are a sanctuary city with a small s and a small c. What do I mean by that? We're looking at from the school perspective, anyone who is productive, is participating in the schools, we never ask any questions, and I would vehemently oppose any type of discrimination based on who's legal or who's not. If they're in Summit, I'm supporting them all the way. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, John?
Sanctuary cities, I think it's a bad idea, and I'll tell you why. Other towns, other cities in the country have claimed themselves to be a sanctuary city, and what have they done? They put themselves at risk of losing federal aid. And do we really want to do that to our town? We're going to try and make up that aid by going to the state? I can tell you right now, as having been a veteran of the police department, it is not the mission of the Summit Police Department or any municipal police department to enforce immigration law, and it never will be, because it's not our mission. So I don't think that's an issue. But the issue is, we can't afford to lose that aid. And why put ourselves, just for the sake of calling ourselves a sanctuary city? There's no problems with immigration in this town. And if you were to put restrictions on immigration, the police department would have a problem, integrating themselves into the community and getting information. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't think we should support any issue with it, calling ourselves a sanctuary city.
Okay. Alrighty. Yep.
There's not that much else to say. We have a 6-for-6 agreement. I will say I also sat down with Chief Weck. I'm a huge fan of Chief Weck. I'm a huge fan of the Summit Police Department. Thank you, John.
Good to hear. Thanks.
And thank you, John, because the reason is that I have not encountered towns where there's such mutual respect between the police department and the community as there is the Summit, and I think that's a special relationship. And I don't think we should try to inject activism into that relationship. And so I agree with everything.
No rebuttal.
Okay. I don't think we need rebuttals on it. Do we have any? No? Okay. Okay. Next question, and you're going to start. Okay. Driving safety. Speed limits are often disregarded, and drivers speed on local streets, do not stop at stop signs, etc. What do you suggest to make our streets safer?
Yeah, great question. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, safety for pedestrians and our children on our streets, on our sidewalks is job one. If we don't have the safety, everything else we've been talking about tonight doesn't really matter. So how are we going to achieve that? Basically, we need to get tough with drivers. We have a lot of neon signs saying what speed you're going, but quite frankly, a lot of us only listen to being hit in the pocketbook. So I would like to see the police with enforcing the traffic laws far more vigorously. One interesting idea is now in New York State where they have a device where if they pull you over, they can look at your smartphone to see whether you've been texting in the last 30 seconds. And I can't tell you how much problems are caused by texting and driving. So no disagreement with me with maximizing safety.
Okay. Mike Waddick.
I wasn't expecting you to go second. I thought we were going down the line.
No, you'd like to,
Since getting back on my feet from a torn Achilles in July, I've knocked on over 2,000 doors in Summit. And one of the top two concerns is absolutely traffic safety. Too often, our minds are not with our bodies. And doing all the walking that I've done, and I know we've all done, you do see lots of people driving and staring at their phone. it's disconcerting, quite frankly. And I have 4 kids, as I say again, they all walk to school. So I think there's a couple of things we can do. Enforcement is one, and making sure that the penalties are stiff if you're caught looking at your phone while driving. I also think we need to look at the sidewalk grid in our town and make it more safe for pedestrians. Our sidewalk grid is incomplete. I'd like to see us over a number of years put in sidewalks where appropriate. So for example, Pine Grove Avenue is one near me. That street literally is like I-95 in the morning. People are flying back and forth between Ashland and Springfield. And, we have someone lives over there. And so, it's unfortunate. And when we talk about sidewalks in Summit, it gets really heated, right? We talked about it on Woodland Avenue. Gosh, I don't know how long ago that was.
Okay.
But anyhow, so
Thank you.
There's a couple of thoughts.
Okay, John?
Well, traffic is an issue I'm pretty good at. You have limited resources in the police department. You can't be everywhere, so you have to do what's targeted enforcement. You have to look at the areas where you have a known problem, and where's the known problem? The whole point of traffic safety is to reduce injury accidents. And ultimately, all accidents, but you ultimately want to reduce injury accidents. And how do you get that data? You look at the accident reports. You look at the locations where there's a high incident of something going on that's causing an accident. It's usually disregard of a traffic control device, like a stop sign. You target that area at the times when these accidents are happening. Other ways to make things more safe is the use of traffic calming devices. I would propose that we more use the raised tables. These are a raised table. It's a raised platform in a roadway. It gives a visible cue to slow down. It also gives them a little jolt when they go over them. Speed humps. They've been very effectively done in Westfield and other towns, and I think we could do well with using them here. And flashing crosswalks. I saw them extensively used at Princeton, and I think they would do well here.
Thank you. Marjorie?
Well,
Speeding
I
cars.
agree with Mike on sidewalks. I think we need more sidewalks, and I think that the city engineer has done a great job with the sidewalk down on Springfield Avenue going from Broad Street into town. I think that underpass with the railroad trestle was always a scary place, and I'm really pleased to see that that's been addressed, and there's now a sidewalk allowing people from that part of town to get into Summit, into the downtown. I think that we need to rely more on the police traffic unit, and I've learned a lot about that talking to Chief Weck, and I think there are 3 parts to this: engineering, education, and enforcement. And I think the first thing is we need to find out where the problems are, and then we need to look at how we can improve the roadways and make it safer. And then finally, we need to do enforcement. I think that's very important. I walk my dog every day. My kids ride their bikes, walk, and and I worry about the way people drive in this town. So I think that's important, and oftentimes.
Okay, thank you. All righty, Matthew Gould.
I'm so excited to talk about this issue, actually, because this is so meaningful to me and so meaningful to the people I've talked to. So, first of all, I will say, I'm going to praise the police department again, that I pulled the stats, and even though there is this feeling of unsafeness that pedestrians have, it looks to me like Summit is about 15% safer now than it was in 2010, according to the number of accidents, number of incidents. That said, if you're having pedestrians that feel unsafe, I think that we have to do something about that. And Marjorie alluded to the 3 E's: engineering, education, enforcement. I think all 3 of those things are important. I think in terms of enforcement, from what I see is a lot of times when people think someone's speeding, they're not actually speeding, but they're just going 25, which feels really fast when you're just walking down the street. I love John's idea about speed tables. I was just doing a production in South Korea this summer, and they had speed tables all over the place. And that means a table like a long one, so it doesn't ruin a plow and it doesn't give you that big thud, but it just gives you a nice smooth thing, and then that really works to slow people down.
Thank you. Okay.
And woodlands.
Dave.
Can I rebut?
Not
Woodland Ave.
Okay.
Okay.
We're still on speeding cars.
I think I've already gone, but I'll go again.
Yeah, you did. I'm wrong. Yeah, you're right.
I'm happy to rebut.
I got offline. Nope. Okay, Beth Little.
So You know, I've also heard this issue over and over again walking on doors, and I'll tell you, it's a big concern for Summit residents. It's also a big concern for Chief Weck, and we spent a lot of time talking about this, and it's a real focus in his department. They have a new traffic safety unit. Since it's been instituted in the spring, the number of summons has increased significantly, so that enforcement piece has been in place. They're also trying to see where the problems are and trying to address them with either more enforcement, education, or engineering. So we have our first four-way stop sign at Pine Grove, at Blackburn, and that seems to be helping traffic in that area. They're going to do another traffic safety to see that. They're going to put some more four-way stop signs over on Whitridge, which is also a big problem. And he's exploring putting in some speed bumps and other things. So he is very focused. Again, I'm a huge fan of Chief Weck as well. As a prosecutor, I've worked with lots of police chiefs, and we have a really amazing police department and a really great leader in Chief Weck, and he is very focused on this issue and is looking for creative and all kinds of different solutions to address it. So he's on it.
Thank you. Okay, rebuttal?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I'm a big Chief Weck fan too. Not a rebuttal, but I know. But we have actually identified 13 areas. I live very close to that Blackburn Pine Grove intersection. That's worked well. It's annoying when you're driving, but it's what we need in at least, I think, 13 other spots. Also, as a Board of Education member, we've got to stop the speeding on Ashwood right outside Jefferson School. It's a disaster waiting to happen, and it's going to break our hearts. And finally, I would...
Finally, that's it.
Okay.
Okay. And any other rebuttal? No, we're good. Okay. Next question. I think so I started. Okay, so Mike, you went first. Now you're up again. Nope. Yep. Yes. Okay. So Mike, you're going to start this.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So this is question number 7, and it is on infrastructure. Given the increase in severe storms, what can Summit do to increase its resiliency and harden its infrastructure after severe weather events? Take it away, Mike.
That's a good question. There's a lot of angles to this. Can you hear me? We moved this.
Okay. Can you guys hear him? Anyone having a hard time? No, they can't hear you.
Good question. All of us that lived here through Superstorm Stan.
No, wait. They can't hear you. Why?
Is this on? Hello?
Pull it up closer.
Okay, so this is as close as I can get.
Is that better?
I'll talk loud. Anyhow, so any of us that lived through Superstorm Sandy, I mean, there was a period of 2 years where we didn't celebrate Halloween. I had to reintroduce it to my kids after it was skipped for 2 years. Again, I think infrastructure investments and public safety are two of the main roles of government. And as a former board member of the Red Cross, I can tell you the city of Summit has done an excellent job post-Sandy. They did a great job during Sandy and post-Sandy of beefing up our emergency preparedness. I'm excited to see when the new rec center opens. That'll be a warming center that can serve that side of town. And I think it's also a safety issue, right? Where we've got to ensure that our seniors are able to get the food and water they need if they're trapped in their home due to lack of electricity or ice storms. So I think we've got a very good plan in place, but you're right, it's something that ultimately we've just witnessed in Florida in the last 2 weeks, something that we have to be very much prepared for, and I look forward to continuing to work with the city as a member of council to make sure we are prepared.
Okay, John.
Well, having been through a couple of these storms myself and being without power for 13 days one time, I can understand the importance of electricity. If we look at all the buildings that are going up for the city, like the rec center and the first aid squad, they're all built now with their own standalone emergency generators. So slowly but surely, we are building in these redundancies to have power and have places for people to go. But I think ultimately, the problem was with the power company. I know Mayor Dixon went back and forth with them during one of those storms, but she stayed on them. And the problem, I think, was there wasn't enough redundancies where there's only one line coming into town, and once that was broken, there's no other way to power it. I think the power company has to come up with more redundancies where there's more than one feed of power coming in, so if one goes out, they can reroute it. Another thing to look at is perhaps bury the lines. In some towns, they bury their power lines underground so they don't have these problems. I mean, unfortunately, we are a tree city, so we can't cut the trees down.
Okay. Matthew Gould.
When you look at the news, it does seem like the world is in one big state of calamity right now, and it seems like weather events are getting more and more severe, so infrastructure is a really important thing for us to look at. I think the first thing we have to do is the studies. We have to do real stress tests on all our public buildings and really all our private buildings too. And then I think we should do citywide rehearsals for emergency preparedness to make sure that everyone knows what to do when something really bad happens. And then lastly, I think we need public-private partnerships to, to retrofit whatever existing structures there are that aren't prepared for really crazy weather to be prepared.
Okay. Marjorie Fox.
I think there are a number of things we can do to harden our infrastructure and to address these severe storm events. One is, I think we need better communication, and we are partway there, but I think, in a situation where people are without power, it's oftentimes, we need to look at other ways that we can communicate and get information out to people so we can respond. We need to continue with planning, and I think that Summit has done a very good job with our emergency planning and readiness. We need to do better coordination with utilities and hold their feet to the fire as far as response time. I live in a part of town where every time there's a windstorm or any little thing that we lose power, and it happens quite frequently, and it shouldn't. And the other thing is, I think we need better tree maintenance, and that's something that the utilities should be doing as well, because we are a tree city and we love our trees, but the trees that are right next to the utility lines are a problem, and we need to coordinate.
Okay, David.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we've heard a number of great ideas here. Obviously, this is an area ripe to get professional advice. The professionals are going to know a lot more given some of the storms that have happened just this past summer. Second, I think communications, as Marjorie was saying, is key. But, it's not just power and losing communication there, but losing the cell phones. Many of the problems occurring down in Florida and Puerto Rico were because the cell phone service was lost. Obviously, generators is always a great solution to have key infrastructure to have its own backup source of power. And finally, of course, having operated a business downtown, we were very fortunate in Sandy. We ended up, the four of us, sleeping in our unit downtown at 382 Springfield because the wires were buried there, and so the downtown was safe. And maybe we should extend that area where the wires are buried. Obviously, there's a cost, and we'll have to balance it out. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Rebuttals.
I haven't got him.
You keep forgetting
I know.
I do.
I'm very forgettable.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I think transparency and communication are extremely important. That would be one of my priorities on council. I would also love the city to see the city invest more in renewables and invest in some solar energy and some other things. I think there's a great opportunity for us to do that. We have a lot of flat roofed public buildings, flat roof schools, flat roof buildings in our downtown, and I would really like the city to look into investing in those types of things and rely less on the power grid and more on renewables, which is good for the environment. It's cost effective and would be great in these types of situations as well.
Okay, rebuttals.
Rebuttal. One of the things I think we should also look at, and maybe pass as an ordinance, is one of the biggest problems we had when these storms happened is we couldn't get gasoline. And the problem was because the gas stations did not have power to run the pumps. I think every gas station should be required to have its own emergency power source so that won't be an issue. So people need gas for their cars or need gas for their generators, they'll be able to get them without having to drive to Pennsylvania to get the gas.
It's interesting. Okay. 7, 8. So, Marjorie, you're going to answer this first. Affordable housing. Summit has an affordable housing obligation that it should meet. How would you work to make this a reality? Marjorie.
I think that so far the city has done a great job. The city has just they've just settled its fair housing case, and they have a plan now in place to provide provide affordable housing. And I think it's great because they have looked at where it's located and to locate it in areas where there's transit and so it's not isolated from the services that are needed. There are also guidelines put in place that the planning board came up with that do a great job of looking at how to make these units, how to integrate them into the community and with design standards for each of the neighborhoods. So I think this is an excellent first start, and council and the planning board have done a great job with it. And I think that my role on council would be to continue to help implement that program.
Okay, thank you. John?
Affordable housing in Summit, like she just said, it's been settled. We settled with the courts, and I believe they just acquired the Italian-American Club property, which is going to be developed, and that's going to satisfy a good portion of our requirements under this act. So there's much more to say on this. We've done our obligation, we saved the city money in litigation, and we move on to it. We can do what we can do with the available space as it becomes available.
Matt Gould?
Well, I think of affordable housing, I think about I'm thinking about it in a broader sense than just what we had to do to meet the requirements, and I think about it in terms of the life cycle of our citizens here. And I'm particularly concerned about senior citizens who can't afford to stay here, as I've already said, but also seniors in college. You know, I have a daughter who's a junior. I would very much like her to move back to Summit after she gets out of college, but as of now, there's no way that she'd be able to make enough money to afford a place to buy or maybe even rent here in Summit. So unless she's going to move back in with me, there's nowhere for her to go. So I think part of this is with, and she can come back. I'm happy to have her back. But I think, you know, if we are redeveloping that area of Broad Street we've been talking about, we have to think about putting places in that's affordable to peoples on all level of the spectrum so that we can capture the whole life cycle in Summit and keep them here.
Thank you. Okay, Beth?
So there's two kind of components to affordable housing. The state recently required all the municipalities to renegotiate with the Affordable Housing Commission, and Summit was able to come to a settlement pretty quickly because Summit has over the years been doing a good job with incorporating affordable housing, and came to a settlement where 20% of new development will be set aside for affordable housing, and as John said, we are already satisfying part of that burden. The second part is lower price housing. And I think that's something that we are lacking in Summit, and I agree. We need more affordable housing options, and I believe a lot of them should be in the downtown. It's a proven way to revitalize downtown is to have more residential space in the downtowns rather than commercial, and we should encourage the upper space in our downtown. We should have incentives for people to convert that to residential use. People who live in the downtown, they eat in the downtown, they shop in the downtown, they use the downtown, and that's good. That's good for all of us. And it gives us affordable options for young families and for people who want to stay in Summit after their kids have grown.
Okay, David?
Yeah, so my first comment would be I wish that Summit was able to develop affordable housing on its own terms, but under the laws, we've had it imposed on us by the court. I think the current council has done a great job negotiating a settlement. But, you know, I have talked with the neighbors over, for example, near Marco Polo, and even though there's going to be a requirement over there, if a developer should propose to develop, they still have to meet critical requirements in those neighborhoods. As a fierce advocate for the Jefferson School and, of course, our entire school-age population, we cannot have excessive traffic over there. We must have parking rules respected and other zoning requirements met before any crowding and affordable housing goes in there that would adversely affect the students at Washington School.
Mike Waddick?
Thank you. When I served on the Red Cross Board, I had the pleasure and the honor to serve alongside Ted Alcott, who was a longtime Summit resident volunteer who pioneered the affordable housing that we have here in Summit. I've also had the opportunity to discuss affordable housing with someone who has a building named after them in Summit, and that's Vito Gallo at Rotary. So I think the city of Summit's done an excellent job in terms of what the state mandates in terms of affordable housing. For the average citizen, though, it's incredibly hard to live here. We are pricing people out because we have too high property taxes. I hear a lot of things about things we should have, but I don't hear how we should pay for them without having to raise taxes. 10 years ago, the median home value in Summit was $840,000. The average property tax was $14,000. Today, the median home value in Summit is $850,000, and the average property tax is $18,000. So we've got to continue to sharpen our pencils and bring down our property tax burden to make Summit affordable and keep it diverse.
Okay. All righty. We are now venturing into rebuttals.
Did Beth get to speak?
Yes, I did.
Beth got to speak.
I just want to make a quick rebuttal to, David mentioned the Marco Polo property. The affordable housing settlement doesn't impose, it doesn't, all the same zoning and planning and everything else that would be in place for that area is still in place. So issues like traffic and parking, everything else would be looked at the same way as they would have before the Affordable Housing Act settlement. It's just that 20% of that, if there is any development in that area, 20% of it will be set aside for affordable housing. So it doesn't create any new burden on the schools or any different burden on the schools. And I just wanted to correct that misimpression.
I'd like a rebuttal also. I being a Washington parent, am a fierce advocate of Washington School too. My youngest still walks there. And the one time I got a bit upset at the council meetings that I've been attended was when they talked about Aubrey Street and how dangerous the people who live there feel it is for their kids because of the traffic. And everyone kept saying, I think we had a consultant in who kept saying, well, when we get a developer in, they'll commission a traffic study and then we'll know if we can make it safer. And I just thought, that scenario right there, Aubrey Street, Plain Street, that has to be solved right away because there's a lot of kids there that feel unsafe.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, question number 9. We're going to start with you, John. Okay, it's downtown. Redeveloping the Broad Street corridor has been discussed as part of the new master plan. Who do you believe are the key stakeholders who should be involved, and what priorities should guide this process?
Well, when I was on the
John.
planning board for 3 years, this came before us as a request from the council to look at that Broad Street, I believe they called it the triangle, to see if it's an area in need of development. And we concluded it was, but the problems are, though, the city only owns 60% of the property in that triangle. So the stumbling blocks to fully developing it is how do we acquire the post office and a little lot behind it, because that was part of the equation. I know Mayor Dixon went to them and tried to negotiate a sale, but that didn't work out right away. And the other issue is the firehouse. It's right in the middle of that, and you have to put it somewhere. We have to find a developer who's willing to take over that property and then move the firehouse or build a new one somewhere central along Broad Street, preferably, I guess, by the undeveloped section of the Broad Street parking lot, unless another spot can be found, but in my opinion, that's probably the only spot. So it's a long way off, and there's a few things that have to be accomplished before. Thank you.
Beth Little.
This is a really interesting project because it does a lot for the community if we can redevelop this area. This area includes mostly city-owned land, and it's currently bringing in only about $200,000 in property taxes annually. It's a lot of flat parking space and a lot of area that's not being used optimally. So I think the stakeholders of the council and the community, and along with consultants, I think we can come up with a great plan that would incorporate multi-use development that would have some entertainment, some retail, housing that we've talked about that would be at a more affordable price point and would also bring residents into the downtown, and with some parking perhaps integrated. It would bring a lot more income into the city it would increase our commercial tax base, it gives us more residents in that area, and it puts the area to a much better use. And I'm definitely in favor of looking at that project, and I'm really excited about it. I think it's a great opportunity to extend it.
David.
Yeah, so I'm extremely cautious on that. First of all, there's been a lot of concern about vacancies and sluggishness downtown, And I fail to see how developing a new downtown on Broad Street is going to help the old downtown. If anything, I think it would make it tougher for stores and restaurants in the old downtown to compete if there's all this new stuff. Second, we've heard about parking issues. We're going to bring more people downtown, but no one here seems to have an idea as to how to handle parking. And finally, it was in the news the other day that this is actually reduce residential taxes. I fail to see how that's going to happen. It costs at least $10 million to move the fire station. How this town is going to pay for $10 million to reduce residential taxes, I fail to see.
Marjorie,
Yes, I think that the Broad Street Corridor redevelopment offers some great opportunities. I think one of them is that it creates housing, and we just talked about affordability. This is an area where we can have housing for, for empty nesters and for young people who want to have access to the train, who want to be able to live pretty much car-free or just with one car but not have to drive as much. I think there are opportunities for entertainment. I know a lot of people, as I've been going door to door, have talked about how they miss the movie theater. And that's something that I think we could provide in this area, is some kind of entertainment. I think I disagree with David's point about this will be competition for the downtown. Urban planners have said that putting people living in the downtown, it creates activity in the downtown. You'll have foot traffic. You'll have people who live and work and shop in this area and use the services of the downtown. And I think parking needs to be part of this redevelopment project.
all right, we're debating here. Okay. Okay, Mike.
I get to answer the first question then, right?
No, you get to answer.
Okay, so you're just telling me it's my turn. I thought you were
Yes,
asking me.
I am.
Thank you.
This is question number 9.
So the stakeholders in any redevelopment, of course, is the city council, the community. And when you're talking about development, it's developers. Broad Street, was the question about Broad Street west or east? Or was it not specified?
It's not specified.
Okay, so
redeveloping the Broad Street corridor has been discussed as part of the
I
new
got it,
master
thank you.
plan.
So Broad
Gotcha.
Street West and Broad Street East, both seem exciting, but there also are challenges. Broad Street West, for sure, is one of the few areas in town where you have city property, we own 60% of it, but you also have federal property, they own the post office, and then you have state property. So there's a lot of different moving parts here. So I think involving the entire community, as we did in the master plan, absolutely makes sense. In terms of what we may or may not be able to put there, I'd love to be able to go back to the times when we had a movie theater and a mall shop in town. However, the economics just don't work. Government doesn't bring private businesses. Private businesses come in because they can make money. And the economics on a movie theater, all you have to do is look at the publicly traded stocks like AMC and Regal Entertainment. They're down 65% this year. So unfortunately, when you can watch any movie you want right here on your phone, I think the idea of that we're going to get a movie theater back again is, I'd love to have it, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
Okay. Matthew Gould.
Yes, I do think it's an exciting project to redevelopment of Broad Street West. I think, where there's a will, there's a way in terms of the federal property and who owns it and how we could get it done. From what I heard, the firehouse is over 100 years old and we have to have our fire trucks specially designed at added cost to fit inside of it at this point. So something's gonna have to be done with it sooner rather than later. How could we shift the burden of paying for that off of the taxpayers? Well, we could get some developers involved, I think, and form partnerships with them. How could we deal with the parking? I mean, I know it's expensive, but one thing I see a lot in California is underground parking. That every new building that comes up, they put parking underneath it. Everybody says it's very expensive. It's a very expensive town, and maybe that's the price for the developers have to pay to come into this town. How can it increase business for all? I think it grows the pie. It brings more people in, brings more people living there, brings more businesses. Success leads to success, in my opinion, so we'd have more people bearing the tax burden.
Thank you. Okay, everyone answer question 9? Any rebuttals?
Yes. David brought up the firehouse. The firehouse is being looked at anyway, regardless of this Broad Street, redevelopment. There's been a study that was just a consultant firm was just commissioned by council. It's over 100 years old. It needs to be renovated. If we renovate in the space where it is now, we're going to be dealing with space constraints. It's probably likely that's going to be moved out of that area anyway. And so to use the cost of that as an argument against redeveloping this area just doesn't make sense. Also, we've talked, it's proven way to revitalize downtowns is to bring more residents in the downtown. It addresses the affordability and it addresses increasing traffic in the downtown, increasing business in the downtown. Increasing our commercial tax base
we're done.
reduces residential taxes.
Okay.
I had a rebuttal as well.
Okay.
So Mike mentioned that the economics may not be there for a movie theater, but I think as part of, now, once this area, if it is declared an area in need of redevelopment, then we can go through a process where we seek proposals from developers, and we can find out what they think is doable. We can, council can set parameters for what they'd like to see, and then ask developers to come back to us with proposals. And it may not be a movie theater, but there certainly could be an entertainment component. And I have 2 teenagers. I know that there's not a lot for families and young kids to be doing in this area.
Okay, we're done. Thank you. And we're still rebuttaling?
Yes.
Okay, go.
I think I'm going to go on record as saying I have 4 kids 12 times tonight. But, I have 4 kids too. I'd love to have nothing but entertainment options. I was just discussing the economics of it. In terms of the fire station, about 10 years ago, we discussed seriously merging our fire department with Milburn. So if it's something that, and I don't know where it ended, as far as I know, it was something that got pretty far and then for whatever reason wasn't able to happen. I think when we do talk about this redevelopment, as a few people have pointed out, the fire department is, that building needs to be replaced, is at a time where we can then talk about sharing more services with towns around us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other Okay, go ahead.
All this talk about redevelopment also is contingent on finding someone who's willing to develop it. And, we have to figure out ways to make it conducive for someone to want to come and do it. The city has done a lot in that the mixed-use apartment residential units with the second floor and commercial business on the ground floor were featured in the 2008 master plan, and they continue into the 2016 of the master plan. Also, the developmental regulatory ordinances are now in the 2018 rewrite are going to allow for first floor permitted uses such as arcades, escape rooms, and cooking studios. So this is incentives to some other type of business.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
you want to
Yeah,
rebut?
I just say something that, I pledge as a potential council person never to get excited about a project. I've studied too many sports stadiums and Olympic buildings and so forth where the governing body gets excited and pretty soon you have the taxpayer guarantees and things don't work out. That will never happen to Summit under my watch.
Okay, that is our last question, and what I need now is each candidate is now going to be given an opportunity for a 2-minute summation. We're going to go in the reverse order, okay? So we're going to start with, we started with David and we ended with Mike before, now we're starting with Mike. Go ahead. This is your summation.
Out on the campaign trail, I'm often asked, Mike, why are you running for council? I'm running because it's important to give back. Summit didn't happen by accident. We all stand on the shoulders that came before us and created the Summit that we have today. I believe that we live in service to others. I want to preserve and grow the Summit experience that my family has been so blessed to have. My vision for Summit is to be the best city in America to live, work, and play. My vision is a Summit where millennials just starting a family can live side by side along the greatest generation, those that have paid their dues and deserve a chance to stay in the home they raised their family in. My vision is a Summit where people from all walks of life and income status can live here. People from all different backgrounds and professions. That's the Summit I was attracted to, and I'm afraid it's slipping away for too many. Summit's strength has always been its people. People who are different, but share the same values and commitment to community. The future of Summit is in our hands. It's our turn to lead. Thank you for your continued support, and I humbly ask for your vote on November 7th.
Okay, Marjorie.
We are at a point in Summit where we can continue down the same path, or we can look for opportunities to accelerate positive change. I want to be your representative on council to move our city forward. As we've discussed during this forum, Summit is a wonderful city, but it faces many challenges. Some of the areas that I would like to focus on are implementing the projects that the community has identified through the master plan reexamination process to increase our commercial tax base, which lessens the burden on residential taxpayers, make our city safer for pedestrians, bikers, and drivers, and make Summit's downtown more vibrant. As a member of council, I will fight to ensure that your tax dollars are spent wisely and efficiently, focusing on needs, not wants. I'll work with Union County to bring tax dollars back to Summit. And as a former litigator, I'm not afraid to fight for Summit's fair share. I will look for smart solutions to save money without compromising what makes Summit special. I will communicate with Summit residents and make sure that their views are represented on council. Too often, residents find out about decisions after council has already made the decisions and voted. We need to make sure that council is more open and responsive and that residents have an opportunity to comment before votes are taken. As a former attorney representing the City of New York and as a volunteer in local government, I've developed the skills, the relationships, and the experience that will allow me to drive change and improve Summit. My running mates and I have proposed a number of concrete proposals to do just that. I ask for your vote on November 7th, and I look forward to representing you on Summit Common Council so we can move Summit forward together.
Beth Little.
First of all, thank you to the League of Women Voters and for everyone for coming out and listening to this tonight. It's really important that you are here and you're part of the process. On November 7th, you have a choice about who you want to represent you on council. And it's an important choice because local politics matter. Our roads, our schools, our property values, and what our downtown looks and feels like are decided at the town level. When you make your choice, please consider that I pledge to be someone who will research all the details and hear all sides of the issue. I will roll up my sleeves and do the hard work needed to find compromises and solutions. I will bring my relationships and experiences from all corners of Summit to bring a different perspective and viewpoint to the issues that face us here in Summit. And most importantly, I promise to represent you with thoughtfulness and integrity. I have developed concrete and key ideas for bringing the city forward. We have looked at the downtown and we have real ideas. Ideas like having an economic development committee in our council, which we currently don't have, to proactively look at what type of zoning, tax policies, and ordinances will make this a place where businesses can come, new businesses can come in and be successful, and we can support the existing businesses we have. Ideas like bringing more residential housing into our downtown to revitalize and strengthen our commercial tax base. And to face our spending with fiscal responsibility and to decrease residential taxes by increasing our commercial tax base and working with Union County. I'm proud of what I've already done in Summit through my work with community organizations, and I'm looking forward to doing much more for Summit as your representative. I hope to represent you on November 7th.
John.
People who run for office in this town have the best of intentions to serve, represent, and make good things happen. My opponent and I will both be new voices on council. However, there are clear differences between my opponent and me. I bring with me a deep knowledge of city issues, concerns, and will use my extensive resources to bring groups together to solve problems. I'm a go-to guy who listens and will quickly respond to residents and business concerns. I bring a different perspective and unique work experience that will allow me to better serve the people. If you want your council member to be able to hit the ground running, someone who knows how to work with people here from all walks of life, someone has shown a willingness to get involved with participation in over 25 volunteer boards, then vote for me, John Dougherty, for Ward 1 on November 7th. As a former Summit police officer, you entrusted me with the safety and security of your family and property. I'm now asking you for the same solemn trust to represent your interest on council. Thank you.
Matt Gould.
Okay, thank you all for listening to me, and thank you so much for having me here. And, I'm a fan of John Dougherty, so that's the thing about running in local politics, is the people you like, the people you're running against. Why do I think I would be a great candidate? I'll tell you, I've been very heartened by all the engagement I see here in Summit and up and down throughout the country, really. Everyone is engaged in politics and government and governance in a way that I haven't seen in my lifetime, frankly, and I think that's very exciting. I will go back to what I believe are my unique skills that I would bring to this job. And I will tell you a story about being a TV producer. So I've been a TV producer. I've produced about 3,000 hours of television for America. And they say being a TV producer is easy. It's like riding a bike. Except that the bike is on fire, and the road is on fire, and the whole world is on fire, and you're in hell. And that's what being a TV producer is like every day. So what do you have to do? You have to be extremely creative. You have to be extremely collaborative. You have to be extremely persistent. You have to make something out of nothing. And that's what I've done for 22 years, and that's what I do on council. So please vote for me for Ward 1 Common Council on November 7th.
David?
Thank you. Again, I want to thank all of you who made this event possible and the attendees for coming. Congratulations to all my fellow candidates for their courage and thoughtfulness. To sum up, I stand before you because I and my family love this city. Not only that, it's the home of my business. I am well suited, having spent nearly 6 years on the Board of Education, provided volunteer leadership for many of our nonprofits, and am well trained in finance and law. My agenda, simple. First is always education. Our legacy is our children. Our best hope for their future is their educational preparation. I have enjoyed exposure to how our district operates, possessed by few. Second has got to be affordability. To make Summit as diverse as possible, from as many vantage points as possible, we must keep costs low, taxes reasonable. Third is public safety. We don't reach any other issues unless our children and pedestrians can enjoy this city without fear of vehicles. Fourth is infrastructure. Our citizens pay a lot to live here. We must make sure that the roads, the parks, our physical environment is in first-class shape. Fifth is the downtown. Its charm sets us apart from many New Jersey cities. We want to keep this city as thriving as possible. But now, having laid out this agenda, one thing I have learned from this year's campaign is that by and large, our citizens here, they love the city the way it is. So I will close with a pledge taken from the medical profession. First, do no harm. I ask for your vote on November 7th for councilperson at large. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone that came out tonight. I want to especially thank Diane Gallo and Melanie Wilson, who worked to screen the questions and make sure that they were political and not about personalities, which is always a challenge, believe it or not. I want to remind everyone to get out and vote, that your vote does matter. I will also tell you that I spent time about 2 weeks ago with Dennis Kobitz, who's on the Board of Elections, and they are in desperate need of poll workers. It pays $200 a day. Essentially, you have to be over 18. And you have to, you what? You need to be registered to vote. So I have little tickets and all, but they at this time don't have enough people to do that. Thank you very much for coming, and we'll see you.